Chapter 1. The Distance. Russell Spaulding pressed his palm against the reinforced window of the transport plane, watching the Afghan mountains disappear beneath a veil of dust and heat. 6 months into his deployment as a Marine Corps logistics officer, and the monotony had settled into his bones like the desert sand that worked its way into everything. His phone buzzed with a message, rare out here, where connectivity was a luxury. It was a photo from his ex-wife Candace, their 8-year-old twins, Casey and Daisy, grinning at a birthday party. "Kids are great. Dwight took us to the aquarium," the caption read. Russell's jaw tightened. Dwight Ford. The man had entered his children's lives 10 months ago, 3 years after Russell and Candace's divorce. The split had been inevitable. Russell's military career meant long absences, and Candace had grown tired of being alone. She'd wanted stability, routine, someone who came home every night. Dwight, a pharmaceutical sales manager with an easy smile and steady paycheck, had seemed perfect. But something about the man set Russell's instincts on edge. Maybe it was the way Dwight always positioned himself in photos, his hand proprietarily on Daisy's shoulder. Maybe it was how Casey's messages had become shorter, less enthusiastic. Or maybe it was just the bitter residue of a failed marriage making him see threats where none existed. Spaulding. Travis Wade, his closest friend in the unit, dropped into the seat beside him. "You got that look again. The one that says you're 1,000 miles away." "Just 8,000, Russell muttered, pocketing his phone. Travis had known Russell since basic training 15 years ago. They'd served 3 deployments together, survived situations that bonded men beyond friendship into brotherhood. Travis glanced at the darkened phone screen. "The kids?" "Yeah, they're with Candace and her new husband this month." "You still don't trust him?" It wasn't a question. Russell had confided his unease to Travis during late-night guard duties, when the silence of the desert made men honest. "I don't know the guy. Candace married him after 6 months. He's never served, never been vetted beyond whatever surface-level background check she bothered with." Russell's fingers drummed against his thigh, a nervous habit from childhood that resurfaced when he was frustrated. "Casey asked me last month if he had to call Dwight Dad. What did you tell him?" "That he should call him whatever feels right." But the fact that Dwight was pushing it. Russell shook his head. "Something's off." Travis clapped him on the shoulder. "For more months, brother. Then you're home for 8 weeks. Plenty of time to assess the situation." Russell nodded, but the unease lingered like a shadow he couldn't shake. Chapter 2. The Call. The phone call came at 0400 hours, 3 weeks later. Russell had been dreaming, a rare occurrence, about teaching Casey to throw a football in their old backyard before the divorce. The harsh ring shattered the memory into fragments. "Captain Spaulding." He answered without fully waking, a skill learned through years of military service. "Russell, it's Jerome Hamilton." The detective's voice was grim, carefully modulated. Jerome had gone to high school with Russell, had been at their wedding. "I need you to sit down." Russell was already standing, his body flooding with adrenaline. "What happened?" "Are my kids? They're physically safe, but there's been an incident. Casey called 911 last night." The world tilted. Russell gripped the edge of his bunk. "Why? What happened?" Jerome took a measured breath. "Dwight Ford locked himself in Daisy's bedroom yesterday afternoon. He wouldn't come out. Casey got scared after 6 hours and called us. When we forced entry." He paused. "Russell, we arrested Dwight immediately. He's being charged with multiple counts of criminal sexual conduct with a minor." The words hit like shrapnel, tearing through Russell's chest. His vision blurred red, then white, then settled into a cold, crystalline clarity he recognized from combat. "Daisy," he managed. "She's at County General for examination. Casey's with her. Candace is, she's there too. But Russell," Jerome's voice hardened with professional disgust, "we're investigating her potential negligence. Neighbors reported hearing Daisy crying multiple times over the past month. Candace claims she didn't know, but the evidence suggests otherwise." Russell's hand crushed the phone. "I'm coming home. Today. Your command has been notified. Emergency leave is approved. There's a flight leaving Bugram in 6 hours." Jerome paused. "Russell, I'm sorry. I've got kids too. What I saw in that room." He couldn't finish. "Don't tell me details yet," Russell said, his voice glacial. "Not until I can do something about it." After the call, Russell sat motionless for 3 minutes, staring at the concrete wall. Travis found him there, already packing Russell's gear without being asked. I heard, Travis said quietly. I'm coming with you. Already cleared it with the CO, personal leave. Russell looked at his friend. You don't have to. I know. But you'll need someone to stop you from doing something that puts you in a cell next to that bastard. Travis's usually jovial face was carved from stone. Let me be that someone. Chapter 3. The Homecoming. Russell stepped off the plane at Detroit Metro 31 hours after Jerome's call. He hadn't slept. Hadn't eaten beyond the protein bars Travis forced into his hands. His mind was a tactical computer, cycling through scenarios, contingencies, consequences. Jerome waited at arrivals, his detective's shield visible on his belt. They embraced briefly, warriors acknowledging shared pain. How are they? Russell asked. Casey's holding together. Strong kid, but he's carrying guilt. Thinks he should have called sooner. Jerome led them to his unmarked car. Daisy's, she's going to need extensive therapy. The hospital psychiatrist said she's withdrawn, dissociating. She won't talk about what happened. Russell's hands clenched into fists. And Candace, lawyered up, claims complete ignorance. Says Dwight was charming, attentive, that she saw no warning signs. Jerome's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Bullshit. We found a diary entry from Daisy hidden in her school backpack. She'd written Mommy knows 3 weeks ago. Evidence. Working on it. But Candace is claiming the diary is fabricated, that Daisy was confused. She's fighting the neglect charges hard. Travis leaned forward from the back seat. What about Ford? His background? Clean. Too clean. Jerome pulled onto the highway. No prior arrests, no complaints. Model citizen by all accounts. Which is typical for these predators. They're patient, careful, charismatic. They build trust before they strike. He glanced at Russell. But here's something interesting. I pulled his financials. 3 months ago, he started funneling money into an offshore account. 40,000 so far. Russell's tactical mind engaged. He was planning to run. That's my theory. I think Casey's 911 call disrupted a timeline. We found 2 fake IDs in Ford's car, both with Daisy's photo. The implication detonated in Russell's skull. Ford hadn't just been abusing his daughter, he'd been planning to disappear with her. They drove to County General in silence thick with rage. At the pediatric wing, a nurse led them to a private room where Casey sat beside his sister's bed, holding her hand. Daisy was asleep, her small face bruised with exhaustion. Casey's eyes, Russell's eyes, sharp and observant, met his father's. The boy stood, walked into Russell's arms, and only then began to cry. I'm sorry, Dad, Casey sobbed. I should have called sooner. I thought maybe he was just helping her with homework, but she kept crying and I heard. He couldn't continue. Russell held his son, memorizing every tremble, every tear. This pain would become fuel. You did exactly right, Russell whispered fiercely. You protected your sister. You're a hero, Casey. Do you understand me? A hero. Casey nodded against his father's chest. Will Daisy be okay? Russell looked at his daughter, so small in the hospital bed. Yes, because we're going to make sure of it. Later, when both children were asleep, Russell stood in the hospital corridor with Travis and Jerome. Where's Ford now? Russell asked. County lockup. Arraignment's tomorrow. His bail will be set high, but he's got resources. There's a chance that he'll make bail, Russell finished. The old Russell would have exploded, would have stormed the jail. But 6 combat deployments had taught him patience, strategy, the art of controlled violence. Jerome studied his friend. Russell, whatever you're thinking. I'm thinking, Russell interrupted softly, that I need to understand exactly who Dwight Ford is. His history, his patterns, his weaknesses. He turned to Travis. We have 4 days before the arraignment. That's time enough for reconnaissance. Travis nodded slowly. What's the mission objective? Russell's smile was colder than the Afghan winter nights. Total victory. Ford destroyed in every way possible. And Candace held accountable for her negligence. He looked at Jerome. Within legal boundaries where possible. And where not possible? Jerome asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Then I'll accept the consequences. Russell's voice was flat, final. But my children will know justice was served. Chapter 4. Beneath the Surface. Russell rented a small apartment 3 blocks from the hospital. His leave was indefinite. The Marines understood that some battles required different uniforms. Travis established a command center of sorts. Laptops, secure connections, contact lists from their shared network of veterans who transitioned into various civilian fields. Grant Crosby called me back, Travis said on the second morning, ending a phone conversation. He's a private investigator now, based in Cleveland. Says he can be here by noon. Grant had served with them 7 years ago. Sharp, analytical, the kind of soldier who saw patterns others missed. Now he specialized in digital forensics and background investigations. When Grant arrived, he spread a file across Russell's kitchen table. Dwight Ford, born in Toledo, 1982. Parents deceased, car accident when he was 20. No siblings. Degree in business from Ohio State. Clean credit, clean record. But here's where it gets interesting. He pulled out a timeline. Ford's moved 11 times in 15 years. Each time, he lived near elementary schools or parks. Each time, he stayed about 18 months before relocating. Russell's blood chilled. Serial predator. That's my assessment. But he's been incredibly careful. No arrests, no complaints, nothing that would flag in a standard background check. Grant tapped another document. I contacted a friend at the FBI's Crimes Against Children Division. Unofficially, Ford's name has appeared in 3 separate investigations spanning 8 years. Always peripheral, a neighbor, a volunteer coach, a family friend. But each time, there was a child victim nearby. Why wasn't he arrested? Travis demanded. No direct evidence. These predators are patient. They build relationships, test boundaries gradually, ensure compliance through manipulation and fear. Grant's face was grim. But here's the leverage. I found Ford's real computer. He had a laptop the police seized, but I tracked his cloud storage. He's got backups, documents, photos going back years. Russell forced himself to ask. Of Daisy? Not specifically. The bastard was too smart for that. But there are encrypted folders I can't crack yet, and digital forensics experts could use them to build a broader case. Grant met Russell's eyes. The problem is, this evidence was obtained through, let's say, questionable means. It won't be admissible in court. But it tells us who we're dealing with, Russell said slowly. A professional. Someone who's done this before and thinks he's untouchable. There's more, Grant continued. Candace. I pulled her phone records. She had 17 calls with a lawyer named Wallace Mansfield over the past month, before the arrest. The implication hung heavy. Travis voiced it. She knew something was wrong. At minimum, she suspected. Mansfield specializes in family law, specifically custody battles where abuse allegations arise. Grant pulled out another sheet. 3 weeks ago, Candace transferred $15,000 to Mansfield's retainer account. Russell's jaw clenched. She was preparing for this. Or preparing to cover it up, Grant said. There's a possibility she was planning to divorce Ford quietly, control the narrative, avoid scandal. But Casey's 911 call forced everything into the open. Russell stood, paced to the window. Outside, Detroit morning traffic crawled past. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the monsters hiding in plain sight. Jerome said Ford had fake IDs with Daisy's photo, Russell said quietly. He was going to take her. Probably already had a location scouted, Grant agreed. These predators often have multiple contingency plans. Ford's the type who'd have been grooming another family already, establishing his next identity. Travis cleared his throat. So what's our play? We've got evidence that won't hold up in court, a predator who's evaded justice for years, and an ex-wife who's complicit through negligence at minimum. Russell turned from the window. His face had the expression Travis recognized from combat, the moment before engaging the enemy, when fear transformed into deadly focus. We give the admissible evidence to Jerome. Let the legal system work where it can. Ford's going away. The physical evidence from Daisy's room, Casey's testimony, the hospital findings, those are solid. Russell's voice hardened. But the legal system won't give my daughter justice for the years Ford spent hunting children. And it won't hold Candace accountable for ignoring warning signs. What are you proposing? Grant asked carefully. I'm proposing, Russell said, that Dwight Ford's past victims get their justice too, and that Candace faces consequences beyond legal penalties. He looked at both men. I need to understand exactly how Ford operates. His patterns, his contacts, his network. Predators like him rarely work completely alone. They share tactics, sometimes victims. Grant nodded slowly. I can dig deeper. But Russell, if you're planning what I think you're planning, then I'll need you both to maintain plausible deniability, Russell interrupted. From this point forward, Your consultant's helping me understand my daughter's abuser. Nothing more. Travis and Grant exchanged glances. Then Travis spoke. Brother, we've followed you into worse situations than this. Not like this, Russell said. This is personal. This is outside regulations, outside rules of engagement. I won't ask you to risk your lives or freedom for my vendetta. Good thing we're volunteering, Grant said simply. Chapter 5, The Architect. The arraignment was a spectacle. Dwight Ford appeared in an expensive suit, his lawyer, a slick defense attorney named Raphael Gifford, arguing eloquently for reasonable bail. The prosecutor presented the evidence, graphic testimony from the responding officers, Casey's 911 recording, preliminary medical findings. Russell sat in the gallery, Casey beside him. Daisy remained at the hospital. The psychiatrist advised against exposing her to Ford's presence yet. Judge Phyllis Riddle, a stern woman in her 60s, listened impassively. Then she spoke. Mr. Ford, the charges against you are among the most serious this court handles. However, you have no prior record and significant community ties. Bail is set at $500,000. The courtroom erupted. Russell's hands gripped the bench in front of him, knuckles white. Ford made bail within 6 hours. Some relative in California posted the bond. By sunset, he was free, albeit with an ankle monitor and strict orders to stay away from children and the Spaulding family. Russell received the notification and felt something cold and final settle in his chest. The system had released a predator back into the world. Whatever happened next was on him. That night, after Casey was asleep, Russell met Grant at a 24-hour diner on 8 Mile Road. I've been thorough, Grant said, sliding a thick folder across the table. Ford's careful, but nobody's perfect. I found his real network. He's part of an online community. I won't say where or how I found it, but it's a group of predators who share strategies. Ford was a prolific contributor under a pseudonym. Russell's stomach churned, but he forced himself to look through the documents. Lists of manipulation techniques. Discussions of how to identify vulnerable families. The clinical language made it worse somehow. The banality of evil, weaponized and shared. I've forwarded all this to Jerome through secure channels, Grant continued. But here's the thing. Prosecuting this takes years. The FBI would need to infiltrate, gather evidence, build cases against dozens of users across multiple states. Ford might see a decade in prison, or he might see 5 years with good behavior. Not enough, Russell said flatly. I figured you'd say that. Grant pulled out a separate file. So here's what else I found. Ford's finances. That $40,000 in the offshore account. It came from somewhere. Turns out, Ford's been blackmailing people. Russell's eyes snapped up. Explain. His pharmaceutical sales job gave him access to medical records. He shouldn't have had it, but he did. He's been identifying people with secrets, affairs, substance abuse, mental health issues. Then he'd approach them, sympathetic and friendly, document their confessions, and extort them. Grant's expression was disgusted. Low-level blackmail, never more than a few thousand per victim, but spread across maybe 20 people. That's how he funded his lifestyle and his contingency planning. Who are his victims? Russell asked. Local people, business owners, politicians, a doctor, a pastor. Grant slid over a list. These are people with reputations to protect, money to lose, families who'd be destroyed if certain truths came out. Russell studied the names, his mind working through possibilities. Has anyone reported him? No. That's the genius of it. The shame and fear keep them silent. But now that Ford's arrested for child abuse, his leverage is gone. These people would talk if they knew they wouldn't be exposed themselves. An idea crystallized in Russell's mind. What if Ford's victims became the instrument of his destruction? Grant leaned back, understanding dawning. You want to turn them against him. I want them to have justice too. Ford ruined lives beyond my daughter's. These people deserve their pound of flesh. Russell's smile was predatory. And if, in the process of getting it, they ensure Ford's punishment extends beyond prison, well, that's just karma. That's dangerous, Grant warned. You're talking about manipulating victims to become instruments of revenge. I'm talking about giving them truth and options, Russell corrected. What they do with those is their choice. Grant considered this. Finally, he nodded. I can make contact. Anonymously, through intermediaries. Plant the seeds. He paused. What about Candace? Russell's expression darkened. I've been thinking about her. She's not like Ford, She's not a predator. But she chose comfort over her daughter's safety. She ignored signs because acknowledging them would have disrupted her perfect new life. Negligence charges might stick, Grant offered. They might. But even if convicted, she'll get probation, maybe a year. Then she'll rebuild, play the victim, claim Ford manipulated her too. Russell shook his head. No. Candace's punishment needs to be social, permanent. She needs to be known as the mother who failed. Public exposure, Grant said quietly. Strategically released information. The diary entries. Her phone records showing she consulted a lawyer before the arrest. Testimony from neighbors. All leaked to the media at the right moments. Russell's voice was cold. By the time I'm done, Candace won't be able to show her face in this city. Her family, her friends, her job, all of it gone. Grant studied his friend. This isn't just about justice anymore, is it? It never was, Russell admitted. This is about ensuring my children never doubt that I fought for them with everything I had. It's about sending a message to every predator and negligent parent. If you hurt my family, there's no corner of the world you can hide in, no punishment sufficient, no mercy coming. Chapter 6. The First Domino. Russell's plan began with a pastor named Samuel Contreras. According to Grant's files, Contreras led a prominent megachurch in suburban Detroit. Ford had discovered Contreras' affair with a church volunteer and extorted $8,000 over 6 months. Russell attended Sunday service, Casey beside him. They sat in the back, Russell observing the dynamic. Contreras was charismatic, passionate, preaching about redemption and moral strength. The hypocrisy burned. After the service, Russell approached. Pastor Contreras, could I speak with you privately? It's about someone who's been hurting children in our community. Contreras' expression shifted, wariness beneath the pastoral warmth. Of course, my office. In the wood-paneled room adorned with crosses and family photos, Russell laid it out plainly. Dwight Ford has been blackmailing you for months. I know about the affair. I know about the payments. And I know that you, like 20 others in this city, stayed silent because he had leverage. Contreras' face drained of color. I don't know what. Stop, Russell interrupted, his voice hard. Ford is currently on bail for sexually abusing my 8-year-old daughter. While you paid him to keep quiet about your indiscretion, he was destroying her innocence. Now I'm giving you a choice. The pastor sank into his chair. What do you want? The truth. On record. Everything Ford did, everything he threatened, all of it given to the police and prosecutors. Your testimony will help build a pattern of manipulation and criminal enterprise. Russell leaned forward. In exchange, I'll ensure your affair doesn't become public. You'll confess privately to your church elders, resign quietly, and fade away. But you'll do the right thing for those children first. Contreras stared at him. And if I refuse? Then I release everything to the media. Your affair, your payments, your silence while a predator walked free in your congregation. Russell's voice was ice. You'll be destroyed publicly instead of privately. Choice is yours, Pastor. It took Contreras 10 minutes to break. He called his lawyer that afternoon. Over the next 3 days, Russell repeated this pattern with 9 of Ford's blackmail victims. A doctor who'd been addicted to painkillers. A city councilman who'd embezzled campaign funds. A business owner who'd hired undocumented workers. Each time, Russell presented the same stark choice. Testify against Ford and face controlled consequences, or refuse and face total exposure. 8 agreed. 1 refused. The city councilman, whose arrogance outweighed his sense. Russell leaked the councilman's connection to Ford to a journalist contact Grant provided. The story exploded. Local politician paid child predator for silence. Within 48 hours, the councilman resigned in disgrace, his political career obliterated. The message to the remaining victims was clear. Russell Spaulding kept his promises, both positive and negative. Jerome called on the 4th day, his voice tight, with professional restraint. I don't know what you did, Russell, but my office has been flooded with witnesses against Ford. People are coming forward voluntarily, providing evidence of blackmail, extortion, a pattern of predatory behavior. The DA's building a case that'll put him away for decades now. That's good news, Russell said neutrally. It is. But Russell, Jerome paused. Some of these people are scared. Not just of Ford, but of something else. Someone got to them. Someone motivated them beyond civic duty. Then that someone did you a favor, Russell replied. Just be careful. I can't protect you if you cross certain lines. I don't need protection, Jerome. I need results. After hanging up, Russell turned his attention to Phase 2, Candace. His ex-wife had been quiet since the arrest, hiding behind her lawyer. But Grant's continued surveillance revealed her strategy. She was preparing to claim abuse from Ford herself, positioning as another victim to garner sympathy and deflect blame. Russell obtained copies of Daisy's diary through Jerome, now part of the official evidence. The entries were heartbreaking. Mommy's boyfriend scares me. I told Mommy, but she said I'm being silly. And later, I think Mommy knows. She looks sad when Dwight's home, but she doesn't stop him. Russell made copies, redacting his daughter's name, and sent them to 3 local journalists along with Candace's phone records showing her calls to the family lawyer weeks before the arrest. He included a single and signed note. This mother chose convenience over her child's safety. The public deserves to know. The first article hit 48 hours later. Mother's suspected neglect and child abuse case. The second followed. Did Candace Ford know? The third was devastating. Diary entries suggest mother ignored daughter's pleas. Candace's lawyer issued denials, but the damage was irreversible. Social media erupted. Her employer, a marketing firm that prided itself on family values, placed her on indefinite leave. Her friends stopped returning calls. Outside her house, a small group of protesters appeared, holding signs about protecting children. Russell watched it unfold with grim satisfaction. This wasn't legal justice. That was still pending in court. This was social accountability, the kind that couldn't be appealed or overturned. Casey asked him about it one evening. Dad, I saw the news. Everyone's angry at Mom. Russell chose his words carefully. Your mother made choices that hurt Daisy. People are right to be angry. But she's still our mom, Casey said quietly. She is. And when this is all over, we'll figure out what that means for our family. But right now, my priority is protecting you and your sister. Everything else is secondary. Casey nodded, old beyond his years. Is Dwight going to prison forever? That's the plan, Russell said. Then, because his son deserved honesty. And if the justice system fails, I'll handle it another way. What other way? Russell pulled his son close. One that ensures you and Daisy never have to be afraid again. Chapter 7. The Trap. Ford's trial was scheduled for 6 months out, but his legal team was aggressively pursuing a plea deal. The DA, overwhelmed with evidence from the blackmail victims and empowered by public outrage, was considering it. 15 years minimum, no early release, registry as a sex offender for life. Russell knew this wasn't enough. 15 years meant Ford would be free in his 50s, still dangerous, still capable of harming others. And prison, for someone like Ford, would be survivable. Predators had their own hierarchies, their own protection networks inside. No, Russell needed something more permanent. Grant had continued monitoring Ford's digital footprint. The man, stupidly arrogant even facing prison, hadn't stopped communicating with his predator network. Using encrypted channels, he was plotting his defense, coordinating stories, even planning for life after prison. He's talking about relocating to Southeast Asia after release, Grant told Russell over coffee. Says the enforcement is lax, opportunities abundant. He's actually excited about it. Russell's expression didn't change, but his mind was racing. Ford saw prison as a temporary inconvenience, not justice. This was a man who believed himself untouchable, who saw children as prey and consequences as puzzles to solve. I need you to do something that'll probably get you fired if anyone finds out, Russell said to Grant. What's that? Introduce a vulnerability in Ford's ankle monitor. Something that fails periodically, briefly, in ways that look like technical glitches. Grant studied him. You want him to think he can escape. I want him to try, Russell corrected. Right now, Ford's playing by courtroom rules because he's confident in his lawyers. But if he thinks his legal options are failing, if he believes his identity's compromised with his online predator network, if he sees an opportunity to run. Russell leaned back. Predators are cowards at their core. When cornered, they flee. And if he runs while on bail? Grant finished. That's a new crime. Bail revoked, harsher sentencing guidelines, all of it. Plus whatever happens while he's trying to escape, Russell added quietly. Grant was silent for a long moment. Then, this is over the line, Russell. This is entrapment at minimum, conspiracy at worst. I know, which is why I'm not asking you to do it. I'm asking if it's technically possible. It's possible, Grant admitted. But what you're really talking about is creating a scenario where Ford ends up dead trying to run, aren't you? Russell met his friend's eyes. I'm talking about creating an opportunity for karma to work. What happens after that is on Ford. Grant sighed heavily. I'll think about it. But Russell was already moving to the next phase. He contacted Julio Suarez, a bail bondsman with a reputation for aggressive recovery tactics. Russell had served with Julio's brother in Afghanistan. I need information on Ford's bail conditions and monitoring, Russell said. And I need to know how your recovery protocols work if someone jumps bail. Julio was sharp. You expecting this guy to run? I think he's too arrogant to accept prison time. If his legal situation deteriorates, he'll see escape as preferable to the registry and prison life. And you want to be ready when he does. I want to ensure he faces consequences either way. If he stays, the trial proceeds. If he runs, Russell shrugged. Then he's a fugitive, and different rules apply to fugitives. Julio understood. Fugitives who resist recovery can sometimes get hurt. Accidents happen. That's unfortunate, Russell said. But necessary. Over the next 2 weeks, Russell orchestrated Ford's psychological deterioration. First, Grant ensured that Ford's encrypted communications were compromised, not by law enforcement, but by rival predators in his network who believed Ford was cooperating with authorities. Suddenly, Ford was receiving threats from people he'd considered allies. Second, Russell had the blackmail victims' testimonies leaked incrementally to Ford's defense team, showing the overwhelming evidence building against him. The 15-year plea deal started looking less like mercy and more like inevitability. Third, Russell arranged for Ford to learn, through a carefully orchestrated chance encounter with a former inmate at a coffee shop, what happened to child predators in prison. The horror stories were detailed, graphic, and entirely true. Ford began unraveling. His lawyer noticed it. Jerome noticed it. Russell, watching from a distance, saw a man approaching his breaking point. The ankle monitor glitched for the first time on a Tuesday. 3 minutes of dead signal, then back online. Ford noticed. 2 days later, another glitch, 5 minutes. Ford researched it, found the technical vulnerabilities Grant had planted information about online. Russell waited. Predators were patient hunters, but impulsive prey. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. Ford ran on a Thursday night, exactly 3 days before a critical pretrial hearing that would have formalized the 15-year plea deal. The ankle monitor showed him leaving his monitored residence at 2:47 a.m., the signal dying exactly 7 minutes later near the Detroit-Toledo highway corridor. Julio's team was activated immediately. Jerome put out an APB. The manhunt began, but Russell was already ahead of them. Grant had installed tracking software on Ford's phone 3 days prior, disguised as a system update. Russell knew exactly where Ford was heading, a motel in Toledo where he'd stashed a go bag months ago, containing cash, fake IDs, and a burner phone. Russell and Travis drove through the night, arriving 2 hours before dawn. The motel was decrepit, the kind of place that didn't ask questions. Ford's car was in the lot, badly parked in his panic. "What's the play?" Travis asked, checking his sidearm. "Legally carried, properly licensed. We wait for him to come out. We follow him. When he's on a dark road, isolated, we call it in. The bail recovery team intercepts him." Russell's face was carved from granite. "What happens during that interception depends on Ford's choices." "You mean whether he fights back?" Travis said. "I mean whether he makes it easy or hard. Julio's team has authorization to use force if the fugitive resists. Ford strikes me as someone who'll resist." They waited. At 6:15 a.m., Ford emerged, carrying a duffel bag. He looked haggard, paranoid, constantly checking his surroundings. He got in his car and headed south. Russell and Travis followed at a distance. Ford was driving erratically, speeding then slowing, clearly inexperienced at being a fugitive. He took Highway 23 south, away from major cities, toward rural Ohio. Russell made the call to Julio. Target moving south on 23, approaching Milan. Driving a gray Honda Civic, license plate matching your records. We're 15 minutes out, Julio confirmed. Coordinating with state police. They'll set up a soft blockade at the Route 113 junction. The trap closed beautifully. Ford approached the junction to find 2 state police cruisers parked across the lanes, lights flashing. He panicked, attempting a U-turn. Julio's recovery vehicle blocked him from behind. Russell and Travis watched from a quarter-mile back. Through binoculars, They saw Ford exit his car, hands raised. Then, stupidly, desperately, he reached into his jacket. It wasn't a weapon. Grant's later review of Ford's possessions showed it was his burner phone. But in the dawn light, with jumpy bail recovery agents and state troopers watching a fleeing child predator, it looked like a weapon. 3 people shouted commands. Ford froze, then made the fatal mistake of any cornered animal. He charged. Not at the officers, at the tree line, attempting to flee on foot. Julio's team pursued. In the woods, there was a confrontation. Accounts varied. Julio claimed Ford attacked one of his agents with a branch. The state police reported sounds of a struggle. Travis and Russell, arriving minutes later, found Ford on the ground, unconscious, blood streaming from a head wound. He resisted violently, Julio said, his breathing heavy. Tried to take Jenkins's gun. We had to subdue him. The EMTs arrived. Ford was alive but badly injured. Skull fracture, broken ribs, internal bleeding. He was rushed to Toledo Hospital under armed guard. Russell watched the ambulance disappear, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no regret. Just cold completion. Will he survive? Travis asked quietly. Probably, Russell said. But he'll never be the same. Traumatic brain injuries like that, they change people. Make them vulnerable, confused, dependent. Travis understood. Prison's going to be much harder for him now. Yes, it is. Chapter 9, The Resolution. Ford survived, but was permanently diminished. The head injury left him with cognitive impairments, memory issues, and chronic pain. His lawyers tried arguing that he was now unfit for trial, but the judge disagreed. The prosecution moved forward, and with Ford's escape attempt adding years to potential sentencing, his defense collapsed. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Casey testified, strong, clear, devastating in his honesty. Daisy didn't have to. Her medical records and diary entries were admitted as evidence. The blackmail victims testified. A pattern emerged of a man who'd spent decades perfecting predatory behavior. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came a month later. Judge Riddle looked at Ford, diminished, broken, barely recognizing where he was, and showed no mercy. Mr. Ford, you are a predator of the worst kind. You systematically exploited the vulnerable, destroyed innocence, and showed no remorse. This court sentences you to 45 years in state prison, consecutive sentences, no possibility of parole. You will be registered as a sex offender for life, assuming you survive your incarceration. Ford showed no reaction. His lawyer whispered to him, but his eyes were vacant. Candace faced her own reckoning. The negligence charges resulted in a conviction, 2 years suspended sentence, 5 years probation, permanent restriction from unsupervised contact with minors. But the social destruction Russell had engineered was more permanent than legal consequences. She'd lost her job, her friends, her reputation. Her family barely spoke to her. Russell fought for and won full custody of the twins. Candace was allowed supervised monthly visits, which Daisy refused for the first year. Casey went occasionally, more from pity than love. 6 months after Ford's sentencing, Russell sat with Daisy in the child psychologist's office. His daughter had made progress, slow, painful, but real. She still had nightmares, still flinched at unexpected sounds, but she was smiling again, playing again, healing. Daddy, she asked one evening, is the bad man really gone forever? Russell knelt to her eye level. Yes, sweetheart. He's gone, and he can never hurt you or anyone else again. Because of the police? She asked. Because of the police, the judges, the lawyers, and because your brother was brave enough to call for help. He pulled her close. And because I promised that I would always protect you, no matter what. Casey, overhearing, came to join the hug. We're going to be okay, right, Dad? We're going to be better than okay, Russell promised. We're going to be strong and happy and together. That's all that matters. 3 years later, Russell had retired from the Marines and opened a security consulting firm specializing in protecting children, running background checks on coaches, teachers, volunteers. Travis ran operations. Grant handled investigations. They'd quietly helped law enforcement identify and arrest 14 other predators, using the networks and tactics they'd learned from Ford's case. Daisy, now 11, played soccer and spoke confidently about becoming a doctor. Casey excelled in school and talked about joining the Marines like his father. They still had hard days, still faced trauma's long shadow, but they were thriving. One evening, Jerome stopped by Russell's office. "I need to ask you something, off the record." "Go ahead." Ford's escape. His decision to run. The circumstances that led to his injury. Jerome studied his friend. That was all remarkably convenient. Russell met his gaze steadily. "Convenient for justice, yes." "Russell, did you?" "I made sure my children were protected and their abuser faced consequences," Russell interrupted. "Everything else is just details." Jerome considered this. Finally, he nodded. "I can live with that." After he left, Russell stood at his office window, watching the city lights. He thought about justice, the legal kind, the social kind, and the kind that happened in dark woods when predators finally became prey. He'd crossed lines, manipulated people, orchestrated events, but his children were safe. Ford was caged, and the world was marginally safer. Travis entered with coffee. "You good, brother?" "Yeah," Russell said. "I'm good. Better than good, actually. No regrets." "About protecting my kids?" "Not one." They stood together in silence, two warriors who'd fought different kinds of battles but understood the same fundamental truth. Some enemies don't deserve mercy. They deserve consequences. And sometimes, justice requires someone willing to deliver those consequences outside courtroom constraints. Russell Spaulding had been that someone, and he'd do it again without hesitation. Because protecting innocence, especially his children's innocence, was worth any price, any line crossed, any darkness embraced. That was a father's promise. And Russell Spaulding always kept his promises. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.